hope you're all doing well. If you're here with your mum and dad, why don't you have a sit on their lap and snuggle up, and we're going to read one of my absolute favourite books. And this is not one from Coorong, and normally all my books have come from Coorong in the last time we did this, but this is one that I read all the time to my little girl. And look, I don't think it was originally written as a Christian book as such, but it has such a strong message of how God loves us and how he wants us to love the people in our life. So this is what it's called. I don't know if you can see it. I don't know if it's back to front. It might be back to front. It's called How Full Is Your Bucket? Can you see that? Do you like his puppy? Have you got a puppy at home? I have a puppy at home. Her name is Cleo, and she's actually looking at me through the window over there. And she's a bit funny. She really wants to be inside on this cold winter's day. I might let her in afterwards. So it's called How Full Is Your Bucket? And here's a little boy and his puppy, and here's his bucket down here. Let's open it up and see what's inside. How full is your bucket? Can you see this picture? Can you see what they're building? They're building a tower. Have you ever built a tower before? We like to build towers. And one of the things we love to do when we build towers is to knock them over. Do you like to knock over towers too? Well, this little boy here is building a tower. His name is Felix. And he is putting the last blocks on the top of his tower. And his little sister is coming in. And she says, I want to build with you. And he says, go away. You're too little. Has anyone ever told you you're too little? That can make our hearts sore, can't it? It's not a nice feeling to be told you're too little. Here's Felix's puppy. He's still watching. Go away, you're too little. How do you think Felix's sister feels when she's told you're too little? She says, I'm big. And he says, stay back. You'll knock it over. And she says, but I can be very careful. And Felix is looking even more cranky, isn't he? And he says, go play with your baby toys, Anna. Is he calling Anna a baby? Look how Anna's feeling. That doesn't look very happy, does it? Anna's not feeling very happy at all. And what does she do as a result? Oh, she uses her dolly and she's knocking over Felix's tower. Poor Felix. Felix yells out, Grandpa! He wants her to get in trouble for that, doesn't he? Grandpa shook his head. Felix, you just dipped from your sister's bucket. Like everyone else, Anna has an invisible bucket. When it's empty, she feels bad. And when it's full, she feels great. Don't you ever notice your own bucket? An invisible bucket. Sometimes Felix couldn't quite tell when his grandfather was joking. Do you have an invisible bucket? I've never seen a bucket. Oh, Felix is waking up the next morning. The next morning when Felix woke up, there it was. A small grey bucket floating above his head. I think even the puppy can see it, can't he? How unusual. When Felix came down to have breakfast, his mum was in a hurry. I've got a meeting this morning. It's almost time to go. Anna, sit still. Felix is trying to get breakfast out. Can you see what's happening? He's reaching for the cereal. What do you think is going to happen? Felix slipped and cocoa wheats have scattered all the way across the floor. Felix, yelled his mum, you should have used the stool to reach that. Felix could feel his bucket tip and big invisible drips spill out. Drip, drip. Ha ha, Anna laughed as she crunched the cereal with her shoe. Drip. Get the broom and clean that up before you miss the bus, scolded Mum. With the school bus honking, Felix quickly swept up the cocoa wheats and grabbed the last blueberry muffin. But before he could even take one bite, Buster jumped up and grabbed the muffin from his hand. Drip. Felix gets on the bus, and the big boy on the bus says something not very nice. Says, "Look at Felix's new backpack. My baby brother has one just like it." Drip. Can you see the drip coming out of Felix's bucket? Drip. He's walking past the children, and they're all whispering about him, and he's feeling very sad. And what's happening in this picture? Someone's knocking Felix over, and what's happening to his bucket? Drip. It was still morning, and Felix's bucket was almost empty. Can you see that? He doesn't look happy, does he? What's on his face? That's a big frown, isn't it? That's a frowny face. Oh, can you show me your frowny face? That's what happens when we're cranky, isn't it? Poor Felix. He's not having a very good day. As he watched his classmates walk into the room, he secretly hoped they would trip and fall. Well, that's not very nice, Felix. You know, that's what it feels like when you have an empty bucket. Felix slumped into his seat and waited for something else bad to happen. And Felix isn't even expecting good things anymore. He's just expecting bad things to happen. Mrs. Bumblenickel walked slowly up to his desk and handed him a piece of paper. He could hardly bear to look. "Felix, you wrote a wonderful story. Could you please share it with the class?" "Wow." Felix grinned, and he felt a big drop land right in his bucket. Drop? Felix got up and he read his story about the Gigantosaurus who wanted a pet. And the class grew quiet, and they laughed in all the right places and oohed in all the scary parts. What's happening to Felix's bucket? Drop, drip, plink, plop. It's getting nice and full, isn't it? Felix could feel a whole shower of drops landing in his bucket. Maybe the day wouldn't be so bad after all. He's opened up his lunch, and guess what he's found inside his lunch? It's a note from his mum. It says, "I love you." Drop. There's another drop in his bucket. Here he is playing in the playground, and he's being told he can be the team captain. Drop. There's another drop in his bucket. Starting to fill up again. Here he is in art class. Do you like to paint like Felix does? What do you think he's painting here? It looks a bit like a cow to me. And the teacher says, "Nice cow, Felix." And he says, "Well, it's a dog." And the teacher said, "Well, nice colours, Felix. Well done." There's another drop going in his bucket. Cool. Laser ant backpack, Felix. Drop. Felix is starting to get a nice and full bucket, isn't it? And by afternoon, Felix's bucket was nearly full. At recess, when he looked around, Felix suddenly realised that his grandpa was right. Everyone else had a bucket too. Can you see some full buckets and some empty buckets? This one's not looking very full, is it? But this one's quite nice and full. And he sees his teacher. His teacher has an empty bucket, and he's dropped his papers, but Felix goes and helps him. Drop. Can you see his teacher's bucket is filling up? And something else is happening too. This person lost his ball, and he got it for him. He says, "Here's your baseball, catch." And the boy said, "Thanks." And the boy got a drop. And what happened over here to Felix's bucket? I'm beginning to see a pattern. Can you see something's happening? Felix found a little boy sitting lonely on the bench, and he said, "Hi, I'm Felix." And he said, "Is it your first day?" And he said, "Yes, I'm Amir." Felix is being a good friend, isn't he? Drop. Amir's bucket is starting to fill up, and something else is happening. The strange thing was that for every drop that he helped put in someone else's bucket, he felt another drop fill his own bucket. When Felix burst in the door after school, he shouted, "You were right, Grandpa. I do have a bucket, and now I know how it works." Then he saw that Anna was crying, and her doll had been torn. "Bad dog," he almost said. But then he thought, well, what if dogs have buckets too? And he said, "Your doll will be okay, Anna. Mum will fix her." And then he said, "Until then, do you want to help me build the tallest building in the world with my blocks?" He's been kind to Anna today, isn't he? And so they did. And what's happened to Anna's bucket now? It's looking nice and full, isn't it? Do you know, when Jesus was here, he talked to us about being loving to one another. And in fact, he said that's the most important thing. He said the most important thing is to love God and then to love your neighbour as yourself. And that's what we're seeing in here, that when we love our neighbours as ourselves, not only do our neighbours feel loved, but we feel loved too. It fills up our bucket. So is there something you can do today to love your neighbour, to love your mama, to love your daddy? Is there, maybe you can give them a great big hug. I know that when I get a big hug from my little girl, that fills up my bucket. And I bet it fills up her bucket too. So let's have a think today about how we can fill up someone else's bucket in our lives. Have a great day. Bye.